Hey guys, Rafe Kelley here from Evolve Move Play. I'm so excited to be back. We're gonna be bringing you guys regular video content of us moving once again. And what we wanted to start with is how to tree climb. Like Tarzan, this is such a big topic that people are reaching out to us and wanting to know more about. So we're gonna be dedicating the next 2 months to content around this. We're gonna show you our regular training sessions, but as we're doing that, we're also gonna be sharing fundamental techniques, ideas, ways to find the best trees in your environment, principles for tree climbing, so you can get started on this yourself. And starting next year, we're gonna have new courses for you where you can join us and be coached in the best tree climbing that's out there. So that's what we're gonna get started with today. Woo! So a lot of times people think because I live in the Northwest, I have really amazing trees, but actually a lot of the Northwest is kind of like this. There's lots of trees, but if you look, none of these trees have any branches close enough to get a hold of and climb. So climbing trees isn't just about going to a place with a lot of trees. It's about knowing where to find trees that are going to have the right kind of structures and limbs to allow lots of fun movement, and also knowing what kind of trees are safe for what kind of movement. So today we're going to show you some of the trees that I've found here in Bellingham. I love this place, but it's hard to find some of the really cool trees that I had in Seattle. Because Seattle has older parks, a wider variety of trees in them. So it's been a bit of a struggle to find the trees that I can really move in. So today we're going to show you some of the kind of spectacular stuff that I'm doing, that I found, but also why those trees are really good for this, how I found them, what I'm looking for, and how I know they're safe for the kinds of things that I'd like to do in them. Okay guys, so this is the first tree I wanted to show you. So this is a Western red cedar tree. We just walked past a bunch of Western red cedar trees and they didn't have any limbs that you could climb, but here we've got these beautiful low limbs that are sweeping down to the ground. So why do we have that here and why not over there? The reason is because this tree is growing with a grass field behind it and a creek on the other side of it, so it doesn't have any other big trees to compete with light with, which means that it can spread its limbs out much wider and from the base, which means it's going to be good to move in. So I'm always looking not just for a species of tree like a Western red cedar, but I'm looking for the context. Western red cedars are one of the 3 most common trees in the Northwest region, and they're amazing for climbing. They have really strong and flexible limbs, and they have very grippy bark. They smell great, and they're just really nice to be in. And the limb structures, when you get up into them, are often really nice to move in. That's the other thing, is that some trees have very dense, tight canopies with lots of little sticks coming out, and those aren't as much fun to move in. And some trees also have really consistent patterns, like the Douglas fir trees that we have around here. They're not that much fun to move in because it's the same the whole time. Whereas cedar trees create a lot more diverse structures. So if you're here in the Northwest region, the cedar tree is awesome. If you are from anywhere else in the world, a lot of times if you're in the Northern Hemisphere or sufficiently far south, these trees are planted as ornamentals in lots of parks because they're particularly beautiful trees. So you can look for Western red cedars and you can look for them in the right context, and that's a great way to start finding a good tree to climb in. Okay guys, so now we're going to be looking at some non-native trees that are really great for climbing in. And this is the type of thing I look for a lot, which is basically a grassy field with a few big trees in them. And I'm particularly looking for certain species of trees. But here we're looking at probably an American beech tree, which is not native here in the Northwest. But beech trees are some of the strongest trees that produce the coolest canopies to move around it. And then the really cool thing here is we also have this, I don't know if it's a sycamore or a maple here, which is also great for moving in. So we have 3 really good trees. Notice they're surrounded by grass, so they have lots of room to spread out and create canopies. And then we can get up and move in them. And this one has really strong limbs, really easy to grasp, and lots of them, and space to move your body around in the tree. So that's pretty much what we're looking for when we first start climbing. And then the other thing is, how accessible is it? In the next couple of weeks, we're gonna go down to Seattle and show you guys how to climb some slender tree branches, slender tree trunks, where you're going up just using the trunk. But a lot of what you're gonna be doing when you're looking for tree climbing initially is finding trees that have limbs that are low enough to start climbing into. The first big challenge is getting up into the lowest layer of the limbs. And this tree right here is a really great example of a tree that we can do that. If we come closer, we can see that for me, I'm a tall guy, I'm 6 feet tall, I can grab this. But even if you're not tall enough to grab it, my cameraman here, he's 5'4", he can run up and jump up and grab it. So we have access to the lowest layers of the tree, and we've got these nice, thick, powerful branches, and they're grippy. They don't have any moss on them, they don't have any lichen on them, and so we can easily start climbing into them. So the first thing that I'm gonna do when I get to a tree like this is look at my potential pathways into the tree. I've got these limbs here. How could I use these limbs and the limbs above them and this and the trunk to get into the tree? As I walk over here, I've got other potential pathways into the tree. How could I do this? I've got dynamic and static ways to do it. I come over here and I've got more pathways into the tree. So when we look at like calisthenics, gymnastics, even parkour on walls, there's certain kind of movement techniques that become really, really critical, like a muscle up or a parkour climb up. But a lot of times the movements look very different from one iteration to another when we're looking at how we get into a tree, because the trees just have different shapes every time. But there's some fundamental things that we're gonna be working on. So we're gonna show you some of those. So here we're looking at a really classic situation. We've got a couple of branches that are V'ing out from a trunk, and now we can use the branches and the trunk to help us up. So there's gonna be lots of ways to use this specific kind of architecture in a tree to get up, but it's one of the most fundamental ones that you're gonna find over and over again. So in this case, I'm just gonna grab on here, put my feet on, and then I can advance my hands up further, step and climb up. So notice this is basically like a muscle up with my feet much more advantaged, because here I can pull and get my foot way high on this. And now when I pull, I'm pushing immediately with my foot. So it's a really easy variation of a muscle up. I can pull from here and hook with my leg, grab and come up. I can use this one to reach above me and advance with my hands. So there's any number of ways that I can use a structure like this to enter the tree. Once I enter the tree, a lot of it is much more intuitive and something anyone can kind of start figuring out. But we'll start to illustrate more of the principles around traversing in the canopy as we go through this series of tree climbing videos. Okay, so once we're up in the tree, the instinct a lot of the time, if you climb trees as a kid, is just gonna go straight up. I'm gonna encourage you not to start with that. Ascending and descending in trees is awesome. It's super fun, but of course, the higher you go in the tree, the more danger there is in a fall. And if you haven't climbed for a long time, you don't have the instincts to know what's safe, particularly yet. So you're gonna be better off staying down here in kind of the lowest layer of the canopy. But if you just start moving around in the tree, right at the base level, just traversing through these lower limbs, playing kind of right below the canopy, using the lowest limbs of the canopy, your body's gonna start getting conditioned to the trees. You're gonna start to get a feel for and understanding of the different types of trees that you're moving around with. You're gonna do that in a really safe way. And then as you cultivate those skills, it becomes more and more accessible to go high, and you're gonna have way more skill and way more fun to take once you go high. So the basic thing that I'm gonna start with here, I call it just a canopy traverse. As I'm moving up into the tree here, look at the kinds of positions my body has to move through. And I could just play with this one space over and over again. How many ways can I move through here? This kind of movement is gonna be super rewarding as a start. And then before you know it, your eyes are gonna open up to all sorts of new possibilities. That's really how I started my tree climbing practice, coming from parkour 15 years ago. I found some trees that were really spectacular for doing vaulting and jumping and strides and swings. But that was this one cluster of trees, and then I started saying, hey, I want to go into other spaces, and I only had a few trees nearby me. I had to drive 30 minutes to get to the space. So I just went into these few trees and said, how many ways can I find to move around in these trees? And sure enough, just going out and doing it over and over again, it just opened this vision up for more and more potentials for movement. That's really what I think is the best way to just get started in climbing the trees is, where can you find them? Find some good ones, get up into them, start moving around, make it playful, make it fun, and that's how you start.